They called me a nobody with their mouths full of steak I paid for. I'm Avery Cole. I'm 39 years old. I used to be the kind of name people stood up for, until they didn't. Until the ones I loved most decided silence was easier than standing with me. Last week, I sat at a long table in a private dining room just outside Richmond, surrounded by the people who once shared my last name and now barely shared eye contact. It was my sister Sierra's promotion dinner. She was being honored for her service in the National Guard. 4 years in, first lieutenant, polished boots, flawless salute, speech rehearsed to perfection. And there I was, sitting in a black blazer that barely zipped, my hair pinned back like I was still on duty, even if the rest of the room pretended I never had been. The waiter brought out dessert, lemon tarts with sugar-dusted plates. I hadn't even finished mine when my father raised his glass and said it loud enough for the waitstaff to hear, "To those who serve their country with honor," he smiled, "and those who just serve their egos." Laughter, a few awkward coughs. Sierra smirked. Even my mother glanced at the wall like she was hoping it would open and swallow the moment. I didn't say anything. I just picked up my fork and held it like a weapon. Not to use, just to hold, just to remember I was still here. And then the door opened. A man in full dress blues stepped into the room, broad shoulders, rows of medals, the kind of presence that quiets a crowd before he even speaks. He didn't look at Sierra. He didn't look at my father. He walked straight toward me, boots clicking against the hardwood like a metronome counting down to impact. He stopped right at the edge of the table, clicked his heels, and saluted. "Major General Cole," he said, clear as a bell. "Ma'am, welcome back." Silence fell like a dropped plate. My father's hand froze mid-toast. My sister went pale. Someone at the far end whispered, "General?" You see, they buried me before I ever left the battlefield, scrubbed my name, replaced my photo in the family cabinet, told everyone I had burned out, washed out, disappeared. But they forgot one thing. Ghosts don't stay buried if they know where the truth is kept. I didn't come back for revenge. Not exactly. I came back because there are stories that deserve to be spoken out loud, and I've stayed quiet long enough. So if you're listening, really listening, then buckle up. Because I'm about to tell you what happens when a nobody walks back into the room with her rank, her receipts, and a witness. When I came home that fall, it wasn't with a parade, or a banner, or even a hug. It was with a key that still worked in the old front door and the knowledge that nobody had asked where I'd been for nearly 5 years. Sierra was the reason I got the invitation at all. "You should come," she texted. "It's just dinner." No mention of the promotion. No acknowledgement of the years in between. But I came anyway, not for her, though I told myself that's what it was. I came to see how far the silence had spread. My father greeted me at the door like a guest. My mother handed me a napkin instead of a hello. Sierra gave me a one-armed hug, tight but empty. Her fiancé barely looked up from his phone. The restaurant was upscale military-themed. Polished wood, brass trim, dim lighting meant to feel honorable. I covered the bill in advance. $723. I didn't want any debates, just control. When I walked in that night, I wore a charcoal blazer, dark slacks, and a muted gray blouse. No medals, no rank, no statement. But my posture gave me away, like it always does. People notice things they can't quite name. How you move when you've been trained not to flinch. They seated me at the end of the table, opposite the podium. I wasn't introduced, just quietly added like a +1 someone forgot to mention. When the waiter poured water, he asked if I was Sierra's assistant. "No," I said with a smile. "Just her sister." Midway through the evening, Sierra took the mic to give a small speech. She looked good, composed, polished, glowing in the way people do when they believe every eye is on them for the right reasons. She told a story. "When I was younger," she said, "I looked up to someone who told me, 'I don't think I can keep up with you.' That stuck with me. I decided I'd never slow down, never quit." Laughter, applause. Several guests turned toward me, subtly, like watching a ghost shuffle in her own shadow. I didn't react. Because I remembered that moment. I'd said it after her first ROTC practice when she came home limping and furious. I said it to encourage her. She twisted it into a punchline. After dessert and the toast that wasn't really a toast, I stood to leave. I didn't say goodbye. No one asked me to stay. On my way out, I noticed something on the wall of service, an installation of family members who had served in the military. There were 3 framed photos: my father in his Vietnam-era greens, my grandfather in black and white Army Air Corps gear, and Sierra, beaming in her new lieutenant blues. I wasn't there. The West Point commissioning photo I'd given them years ago, me standing stiff-backed in dress whites, my cap tilted just so, was gone. In its place was a framed quote about humility in service. No face, no name. Later that night, back at the house, I slipped into the living room while everyone slept. The family cabinet still stood like a shrine, glass-fronted, softly lit. I crouched down to check the bottom drawer, behind old coasters and spare batteries. There it was, my frame, still intact, but the photo inside was missing. In its place was the cardboard filler that came with the frame. The kind that says, "Insert 5x7 here." Not thrown out, not destroyed, just shelved, like I had been. I held the frame in my hands for a long time. I didn't cry. My eyes stayed dry, but my fingers shook slightly, not from sadness, but from recognition. There's a kind of grief that doesn't wail. It just settles in your bones like dust in an abandoned room. The next morning, over coffee, I asked my mother, "Did you take my picture out of the cabinet?" She didn't flinch. She added cream to her mug and said, "I rearranged a few things. That wall needed some air." "No one really notices what's missing," she added, eyes still on her cup. "No," I said. "That's kind of the whole point, isn't it?" She said nothing. And somehow, that said everything. That night, I got a text. No name, just a message. "They're digging into Langsby Creek. Your name's coming up. Be careful." I stared at it for a long time. Langsby Creek, the operation that ended my career. The one where I held the line when Intel told us to move. The one that saved lives, but broke protocol. The one I took the fall for. And now it was back. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the guest room, listening to the distant hum of traffic outside the Cole family house, trying to remember how many people knew what really happened at Langsby Creek. 3, maybe 4. All of them trusted. All of them warned. And one of them was dead. I called in a favor from Ellis Barnes, a former cyber analyst who owed me more than one quiet extraction. He now worked at a defense contractor outside Norfolk, the kind that doesn't show up on Google Maps. I forwarded him the text, and within hours, he pinged me back with an IP trace. "Last login was from a National Guard device assigned to your sister," he said. "Sierra's tablet, last year." I felt the world tip a little, like standing on a ship that suddenly changed direction. Not from betrayal. No, I'd felt that already. But from confirmation. The cold kind. I didn't call, I didn't text, I drove. At 0800 the next morning, I walked into her base like I still wore the stars on my shoulder. Technically, I didn't. But respect lingers. Or maybe it was just the way I moved. The guards nodded me through. I found Sierra in the break room, tapping through her phone with a plastic cup of coffee and a bored expression. She blinked when she saw me. Not guilt, more like irritation. I sat down across from her and slid the printed trace across the table. "Did you know someone used your device to access classified files from Langsby Creek?" Her eyes flicked to the paper, then to me, then away. "I sent it," she said after a pause. "Last year. I was tired of everyone comparing me to you. Even when you were gone, you were still the standard. I just wanted to level the field." I stared at her. Not as the soldier she was trying to become, but the kid I once taught to ride a bike, who used to cry when she scraped her knees. "You think I don't know what it feels like to be erased?" I said quietly. "The difference is, I never tried to erase you." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't know it would go public. I thought it would just disappear into a report somewhere." "It doesn't work that way," I said, standing. "Nothing disappears anymore. It just waits. That night, an email hit my encrypted inbox. No name, just a subject line. I'm alive. Strick's key still works. Com Outpost Roanoke. I knew who it was. Sarah Lang. She had been my closest ally during Langsby, an intelligence specialist with a talent for tracking falsified orders and spotting irregular command chains. She'd vanished after the tribunal. Rumor said she'd fled the country. Others said she'd taken her own life. But she was alive, and she had the data. I called Barrett. Brigadier General Barrett had once been my direct superior. He was the kind of man who carried the Constitution in his pocket and read it like scripture. If anyone could help, it was him. "I'll get her," he said. "But if she's compromised, we burn everything. You understand?" "I do." 3 days later, the plan came together like a field op. Barrett would recover Sarah. I'd handle the release. The perfect place? The annual Military Intelligence Strategy Conference at Arlington. Vaughn, yes, General Marcus Vaughn, the same man who orchestrated the Langsby campaign, was set to give the keynote. Front of cameras, full press, polished lies. I still had friends at the academy. One of them had access to an uplink system built into the old AV grid of the conference center, a leftover from training exercises never decommissioned. We could hijack the feed. If we timed it right, we could broadcast Vaughn's own words. And we had them. Audio, clean. Sarah's message included a sample. "You will reprioritize Sector Delta. Civilian risk noted. Acceptable." Vaughn's voice, cold, calculated, commanding, undeniable. We had one problem, access. Sierra volunteered. "They'll still let me in," she said. "They know I'm under review. If I ask for a reinstatement consult, no one will question it." I hesitated. Last time she got involved, she almost destroyed everything. But something was different now. Her eyes weren't bitter. They were focused. "All right," I said. "But we do this by the book. No improvising." The day of the summit, she entered through the south gate with a plain uniform and a hidden transmitter beneath her ID badge. I monitored the uplink from a van 3 blocks away. Ellis sat next to me, typing with the precision of a surgeon. Inside, Sierra approached Vaughn casually. He smiled, that false political grin, and greeted her by name. Then he looked around the room, loud enough for the nearby brass to hear. "You know why your sister was dangerous? Because she believed justice mattered more than headlines." And that's when we triggered the feed. His voice flooded the room. "I authorized the strike. We needed a clean win. Soldiers follow headlines. That's how we maintain control." Gasps, chairs scraping, silence thick like smoke. And then, static. The line went dead. "Someone found the uplink," Ellis muttered. "They cut the source." I threw open the van door. Outside, Ethan, one of my cadets, too damn young to be here, was prying open the relay box. His face turned toward me, just as the shot cracked through the air. He stumbled, dropped. I caught him before he hit the ground. Blood bloomed through his jacket. "Don't let them win with silence," he whispered. I tightened a field wrap around his arm and set him against the wall. "You're not done yet, soldier." Then I ran back to the van, rerouted the signal through a backup node. The screen flickered. The feed reactivated. I leaned into the mic and spoke, not as a general, not as a sister, but as someone who had lived too long in silence. "My name is Avery Cole. I once ordered a hold fire when I had every right to shoot. Because there were children in that blast radius. That decision cost me everything, but it saved them. I was erased. But I am here, and so is the truth." Then Sarah's recording played again, this time uninterrupted. Inside the summit, Vaughn didn't speak. He just stared ahead, hands white-knuckled on the podium. The room didn't erupt. It recoiled. And in that stillness, justice finally got a voice. They didn't cuff us. No raised voices, no headlines, just a silent escort through a back hallway that smelled like ammonia and quiet punishment. Sierra and I were placed in a room with white walls, metal chairs, and fluorescent lights that buzzed louder than anyone dared to speak. She sat with her hands clenched. I sat with mine open. Then the door opened. General Vaughn walked in, minus the ceremony, but still wearing authority-like armor. His face held that polished indifference he'd perfected in hearings and press briefings. "You think what you did was noble?" he asked. "I think it was overdue." He gave a thin smile. "You had options, Avery. You could have walked away, kept your legacy intact." "I didn't fight to be remembered," I said. "I fought so no one else would be erased." He blinked once. A fracture. The door opened again. General Barrett stepped in, then Ethan, one arm in a sling but standing tall. And finally, Sarah Lang, alive. Paler than I remembered. Thinner, but eyes still sharp. She held a silver USB like it weighed more than metal. Sarah placed it on the table, calm as thunder. "Full logs," she said. "Audio, financial transfers, orders rerouted, names falsified. Langsby wasn't the only one. He made a system out of it." Vaughn moved toward it. Sierra stepped between them. Her voice didn't rise, but it landed. "I used to be afraid of you," she said. "I let it make me small, but I took an oath, to truth, not obedience." The door opened one more time. This time, security stepped in. Not for us. For him. Vaughn didn't fight. He looked at me like a man watching his own shadow detach. No anger, just stunned silence. As they led him away, I didn't feel triumph. I felt breath. The kind you take when weight leaves your chest after years of pressing down. Later, I stood at the ICU window, watching Ethan sleep under pale light and tubes. The nurse beside me whispered, "He's lucky." "No," I said. "He chose right. That's not luck. That's character." By morning, the headlines had cracked wide. General Vaughn arrested in military cover-up. Whistleblower clears her name. The Pentagon called. Offered reinstatement. Full rank, back pay, a chair on the Strategic Review Council. I said no. I had seen the view from the top, and I'd seen what got buried beneath it. Instead, I returned to the academy, where cadets still believed words like duty, sacrifice, integrity meant something. Outside the mess hall, a new photo appeared. Me, Ethan, Sierra, Sarah, arms linked. No ribbons, no stars, just presence. Underneath, scribbled in black marker, "She didn't fight for attention. She fought to make attention mean something." One afternoon, my mother called. "There's something you should know," she said. "Your photo's back in the cabinet." I didn't ask who put it there. That didn't matter anymore. Later, I returned home. On the hallway shelf were two frames, Sierra's recent promotion photo, and beside it, my West Point portrait. Standing tall, 22 years old, eyes full of certainty, my father met me in the kitchen. Wordlessly, he handed me a wooden box. Inside, a folded letter dated 3 weeks after my discharge. I didn't know how to say I was still proud, and I wasn't sure you'd want to hear it. I didn't read it there. I folded it back into the envelope, slipped it into my jacket pocket, close to my heart, where it belonged. That fall, I walked into my lecture hall. No medals, no rank, just a whiteboard and students waiting for something more than drills. "This isn't a class about war," I told them. "It's about what comes after, when silence becomes more dangerous than bullets, when the truth costs more than lies." Ethan sat in the front row, eyes sharper than ever. After class, I found a note on my desk. "I used to think courage was a roar. Now I know. It's the truth, spoken when no one's listening." I stood there longer than I meant to. Weeks later, Sierra resigned from the National Guard. Not from shame, but from choice. She joined a civilian watchdog group, small, unfunded, but relentless. "Why?" I asked her once, quietly. She smiled. "Because I once erased you, and now I want to make sure no one else is ever erased again." We weren't perfect, but we were whole. One crisp morning, we drove back to the old base where I once commanded. The buildings had new paint. The field was empty. Beneath an old oak tree by the parade grounds, we planted a small metal plaque. No name, no rank, just words. For those who died unnamed but never unnoticed. We stood in silence. Grief doesn't always need a voice. Sometimes it's shared in breath, not sound. That night, a message landed in my secure inbox. No name, just Cracks still exist, but now they know you're not standing alone. I didn't save the sender, but I saved the moment, because someone, somewhere, still believed. And that's how truth survives. Not by shouting, but by refusing to stay buried.